and welcome to the Secrets of Happily Ever After podcast. I'm your host, Monica Tanner, and I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend today. Her name is Bria Gadd. She's a personal trainer, holistic health coach, and integrative nutritionist who specializes in female hormones. She's the founder of the Period Whisper podcast and the P4 formula, helping women with weight release and energy gain in pre and post menopause and finding clarity in hormonal chaos. Welcome, Bria. How are you?
Thank you, Monica. I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and be a part of your incredible podcast.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how excited I am to have this conversation. I've been telling my husband for like a week, like, I cannot wait, I cannot wait, I cannot wait. So no pressure.
Oh yeah, none at all. Thank you.
So first things first, let's talk about what is perimenopause and why should we take it seriously?
Awesome. I love this question because I think perimenopause gets lumped in with menopause, which is a really much more familiar term for us as women and men, I'm sure as well. Whereas menopause is actually one day, 365 days after our last period, after our last menstrual period, as we kind of head into that phase of our life. And then we're what we call postmenopause. Everything leading up to menopause, all these symptoms we hear about, whether it's hot flashes or not being able to sleep or irritation and frustration, it actually fall under the umbrella of perimenopause, which is really this time frame of starting around 35 to 55 for women, where pretty much the baton of the role of our hormones is being passed from our ovaries to our adrenals. And it's like a reverse puberty. And it is as significant as puberty or as pregnancy and postpartum. And there's a lot going on in there. But to say why it's significant, there's like two major shifts that are happening in perimenopause. One is that physical shift in our body where our hormones are being, the job of our hormones are being passed. And I like to think of it as it's like someone's leaving at work and they're passing all of their duties on to someone else who is brand new to the position and already has a really full plate. So that transition can be really challenging and wreak a lot of havoc on the body. So a lot of symptoms like bloating, low moods, libido issues, weight gain, insomnia, even depression and anxiety, as well as, irregular and heavy periods can come into play. But the other shift that I think is really important to understand about perimenopause is that there are two parts of our brain, and I'm going to get a little geeky here for you, but I'll keep it as simple as I can for the audience. Our hippocampus and our amygdala, which are kind of like our memory encoders and retrievers of the body, they're really sensitive to this hormone shifting that's happening in the body. And it's like all of a sudden our brain becomes more aware of past traumas, repressed emotions, things we've been sweeping under the rug. So there are two pretty significant shifts happening in the female body during this time frame. And 40 million women are going through perimenopause right now in the world. And 50% of them, and I was one of them, don't even know the difference between perimenopause and menopause. And I guess the final stat around that is that 73% are suffering with these symptoms and don't know that they can get help, don't know that they can make these changes in themselves. And really, I think the positive around it, if we do take it seriously, is first that we are actually very much in control of this healing. We don't have to just lay down and wave the white aging flag. And when we do understand and respect and support our bodies correctly, this hormonal shift can actually signify an incredible opportunity for us to grow, connect more deeply with our partners, let go of old habits, and really like step into the most creative, purposeful years of our lives. That
Oh
was a
my
long
God.
answer.
First question. I already learned so
Yeah.
much and I already have so much more hope for the future. I'm like, please,
Yes.
can you explain to me the chaos that's happening right here? Okay.
Yes.
This is so exciting because I am solidly within perimenopause and I do feel like I'm having a lot of those symptoms. So at least there's a reason for it.
Yeah. And sometimes that's what we need first is to not feel alone. Like, oh, I'm not going crazy.
Yes, yes, that is so very helpful. Okay, so can you give us some ways that perimenopause might be affecting our marriage relationship without us even knowing it?
Yes, absolutely. What a great question. So our body is always working to be in balance. Men's bodies, women's bodies, animal bodies. So this shift kind of adds a significant workload onto our body, which if you think about midlife for men and women, we're raising young children still, we're handling aging parents, we're dealing with peaking careers, all the chaos going on in the world. So there's a lot happening. And now all of a sudden we have an added workload to the body as we try to bring into balance and make this transition. So it becomes a real energy supply and demand issues. And I would say when it comes to relationships or marriages, some of the big players that we're looking at are libido, weight gain and moods affecting our confidence as women, as well as, the mental load that statistically is imbalanced in, I'd say, heterosexual marriages anyway. So specifically with libido, just to kind of touch on that one, a lot of us think as we move into perimenopause and menopause that, we're going to dry up or that we're, just don't have that drive anymore, when really it has so much more to do with just this lack of energy. We just don't have the time and space and bandwidth. It's still there, it's still in there, which I think is important for relationships to know. It just doesn't have the space in this moment that we need to focus on creating.
Wow.
So
So
that's a
what
big
I
one.
kind of hear you saying is because one of the biggest dampers on libido is stress. And so I feel like what you're saying is
Mhm.
midlife is already very, very stressful, but now
Yeah.
your body is under stress and you don't even
Yes.
understand the stress that your body is under. So when you're feeling exhausted and tapped out and all of those things, it's not just because of all the things happening in your life, which is enough as it is, but also
Yeah,
your body is doing this huge transition that's putting this physical stress on you that you can't even see.
totally. It's like having a computer with too many tabs left open. The
Yeah.
battery drains faster.
Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
important. Okay, big question
Mhm.
now. What do you think every man and woman should know about the female cycle to improve intimacy and connection?
Awesome. I have three things here for you. So, one, I think it's important to know that it is as significant as pregnancy and postpartum, like this shift. So, even something as simple as women in general needing 20 more minutes of sleep at night in regular life, let alone even more, thinking about like if you're a partner, and you have a female partner who's going through this, it's really just like when she was going through that first trimester. She's going to be more tired. She needs more nourishment, more self compassion, more space during this time. So I think that's a really important one. And the second one is that when it comes to weight release or energy, because a lot of us in midlife, we start to struggle with these things or we're more conscious of this. What works for a man does actually will work against a woman. So just supporting each other's methods differently rather than just assuming like, oh, if you only did it this way, it would work. And third is probably the most important one being that although men and women both have a circadian rhythm, which is our like 24-hour clock that kind of determines our energy levels, women actually have an additional energy clock inside called our infradian rhythm. And that's our 28-day cycle. So whether you're still bleeding or not, or you're kind of in and out as we can go through during perimenopause, we have this rhythm. And I think what's really important for especially men to know, but women to know about their own bodies is that in the first half of our cycle, like our what they call our follicular and ovulatory phase, which are the 2 weeks after our period, we have more energy, we have more libido, we have more balance, we have lower cortisol and stress in the body. So we actually are much more capable and accepting and ready to spend time and connect more deeply with our partners. Whereas in our second half of our cycle, we actually have significantly less energy, burning upwards of 250 to 350 additional calories a day. So we need more nourishment, more space, more peace, and we're less apt to be able to be open for deeper connection at that time.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love
That's a
this
lot.
so much. I want to touch on each thing that you said because, like, number
Yeah.
one, just to make it more
Yeah.
personal, like, I have been so much more tired. Like, I just can't
Yeah.
stay up as late as I normally do.
Hmm.
Like, I just find myself being like, like we'll watch something. And it used to be I could, my husband would fall asleep during a movie and I would stay awake. But now it's like, no matter what I do, I sit down on the couch and I'm
Yeah.
like 10
I
seconds
would,
later, I'm sleeping. But the other thing that
yeah.
I think is really significant about what you said is also I feel more hungry than normal.
Yep.
Like, and I'm like, I don't know what's wrong. And this is kind of like my go-to. I'm like, I must be on my period, but like all the
Yeah.
time.
Well, and it's so funny that you say that. I mean, this is kind of what we've been, taught to think of it as. But when we're on our period, if you think about it, the body is doing more. It's
Yeah.
sloughing off something, just like it would be in building a human in a first trimester. So it's
Yeah.
doing a lot more. So the metabolism raises, and we need more energy. That's where that energy supply and demand. So it would make a lot of sense that you're hungrier right now, that you're more tired because you need more energy to maintain what you're asking of your body or what your body needs right now.
Okay, that makes so much sense. And the other
Yeah.
thing that I think is really important because my husband and I are both very into fitness and eating healthy and all
Mhm.
the things, right? But it's like all of a sudden my body is really wanting to hold on to weight. And, my
Mhm.
husband's body is just the same as it's always been. But I
Yeah.
feel like the argument we kind of keep getting into is I'm like, I hate it when you think that I can do things the same as you and it will have the same result, right? Like I'm always like, I
Yeah.
feel like you think that if you were me, you would just be able to lose the weight. And it's not like that's my
Yeah.
whole goal and function, but I'm just like, like when we have these conversations and I'm like, I'm having such a hard time losing weight. My husband's like, well, it's not hard. Here's how you do it. And I'm like, okay, but
Yeah.
it's different for me. I
Totally.
promise it is.
It is. Yeah. And I love that you recognize that because it's, not only do we have these two rhythms where men just have the one to manage, so we're already multitasking.
Yeah.
We've got this change happening, but we also have to think about it like in midlife, our body has been through a lot. I know you have children, so our body's been through significant changes during those years and that their bodies just haven't. So we've done more physically that way in our life and it operates just differently. And, just to add a little, kind of tip for that, that I always recommend, to my clients and to women I'm talking to, it's actually a key time in our physical being where really we should step back from fitness a little bit and think more of it as movement, like walking, yoga, like gentle, low impact movement can provide so much more because whenever we ask more of our body in like a regular workout program, or resistance training, by nature, it's automatically adding stress or cortisol to the body to stress it out. But if we don't have the energy there, the body shifts into stress mode and actually stores it as fat and slows down the metabolism. So we're just putting out effort and we're falling backwards. So it can be a bit of a tough mindset shift for women. But really, we're going to get way more energy, feel a lot better in our body if we take a step back from our fitness until some of this transition eases.
Okay, Bria, I feel like you're making my life right now, and I'm gonna make my husband listen to this on a repeat
Yeah,
because sometimes I just feel like I would rather just go for a walk than go to the gym. And
do
maybe
it.
I should just be listening to that.
You should listen to your body. Absolutely. Absolutely. It took me, and I was a personal trainer, that was sort of how I first built my business in the wellness industry. And so it was a real mindset shift, but I had to take 4 whole months off of regular workouts, just shifting into walking and yoga before, my body just completely shifted into a much happier, healthier, more energetic state where I wasn't falling asleep on the couch at 7:30. So I get it.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to make you tell us more about that. But let's
Okay.
bust some myths first because I want to talk
Yeah.
about hormones, cortisol. You're touching on it, but
Yeah.
why, as women, do we feel so broken? Because, like, it's
Yeah.
just so hard because we can't see any of this happening. So we need people like
I
you to, like,
know.
just set our mind at ease and be like, it's okay.
Ah. Thank you. Yeah, I think in general, like so much of it's often already in our gut where we know something's not right. Like you said, I almost feel like I'd rather just do this, but that's not what the world has told us.
Right. Because,
And
like,
so a
that's so
lot of this is,
weird. Why would I feel that? I should just go
yeah,
to the gym. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Whereas I think that like really this intuitive time for women is really our opportunity to start honoring those inner whispers. But when it comes to, hormones and cortisol specifically and how we're feeling right now, I think one of the biggest myths that is important to understand is that I think a lot of us think about menopause and we think, oh, we're running out of estrogen, which is a predominantly female sex hormone.
Mhm.
But ultimately, in the first kind of half to even 2/3 of these perimenopause years, it's much more of a progesterone issue. So, estrogen and progesterone are these symbiotic hormones that we have that are a requirement for our energy levels, of course, for ovulation, how we feel in our body, and it's a delicate balance. But any at this stage in the game, we start to struggle a little bit more with our progesterone, and any bit of cortisol, whether it's a good cortisol coming from our workouts, or whether it's a tough one from not eating well enough or doing intermittent fasting, which is also a really difficult thing for women in this age. It adds cortisol to the body, suppressing our progesterone because they fight for the same receptors. And that throws off this balance, making estrogen more dominant in the female body. And dominant estrogen in the female body ends in, brain fog, low energy, excess belly fat, a lot of mood swings, a lot of frustrations and anxiety, depression, like you name it, heavy periods, everything that we think about when we just think PMS, but it's really just an excess of estrogen that the body can't handle right now.
Oh my gosh.
So that's a big one. Yeah, I think that's a really big myth that's important that women understand, is that it's much more about removing the cortisol from our body so the body can actually do what it does best, which is heal all on its own.
So, would you say that one of the most important things we can be thinking about if we're in this stage of perimenopause is just trying to lower our stress levels? Like, just
Yeah.
in any way, physical, emotional, mental stress, just lower it.
100%. I think, like, really, instead of thinking about this, especially we have a common feeling, I think, when we don't maybe feel very great in our body, that we're like, okay, I need to move more and eat less, that calories in versus calories out mentality. But in this stage in our game, it really has everything to do with cortisol and inflammation. So we want to look at our life and think, okay, how can I stop adding more cortisol and inflammation to my body through my movement, through the way I eat? And how do I manage the cortisol that I can't control, right? Like, we have natural stresses from being a parent or in our relationships or in our careers. So how do I manage that better and reduce what I can control? And I think the other thing to really remember is, because we're dealing with an imbalance, it's almost like we're in the red or in the basement of change. So before we can expect to see change, we really need to get ourselves out of inflammation and into the black. So if you're someone who is trying to lose weight, you really have to recognize it's going to take a lot longer to get there than usual, because we're in the pits, we're in the low part. We got to bring ourselves up, reduce that inflammation, heal the body, and then we can shift into fat burning or hormone repair. But we got to get up there first. And that's where cortisol plays a huge role.
I feel like some women really struggle with this more than
Mm-hmm.
others. And I'm wondering if you
Mm-hmm.
can tell us maybe why that is, and then how can we be
Yeah.
on the side of the women that struggle less?
Yeah, right. Isn't that is definitely the goal. And I would say it's entirely because um, perimenopause sort of highlights the habits in our life that are no longer working for us: physical, emotional,
Mm.
mental. And for a lot of us, they likely never were. It's just that youth is very forgiving, right? Just like when our bodies are younger, are like a brand new car, it can be driven hard and put away and manage it. Whereas when we get older, it's like we've headed up to here, right? Like, I've already headed up to here, so I'm not going to handle that. So depending on how your typical habits of foundational health are, like how you sleep, how you manage stress, how you eat, how you move, how you bring pleasure into your life, is really going to determine how you feel going into this. Genetics plays, of course, a small piece of the pie, but really, like, 80% of it has a lot to do with what your lifestyle habits are like, and how if you're someone who's been a people pleaser for a long time, then you're going to have a lot of suppressed frustration and things to deal with that are going to start to come up, whether you like it or not, at this age, because of that brain shift I was talking about. So it really depends on how you've treated your body, what your habits have been, and what state your adrenals are in as they take on this new role. Does that make sense?
It makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like how can we get this message out to more people? Like, I'm
Hmm.
so glad you're
Yeah.
here and we're going to promote
Oh,
this
thank
episode
you.
like crazy. But this is so important for women to hear because,
Hmm.
like, I know I actually went through a lot of what you're talking about a little bit younger,
Hmm.
but I can
Hmm.
see how in perimenopause, yeah, I can see how your physical habits would be really, really important, but
Hmm.
also going through that phase of really facing those I call them adaptations that no longer work. I think that
Yeah.
all our lives, like we're growing up and we figure out how to adapt to our situation. And that has a lot to do with our family of origin and our experiences and the things that we're
Yeah.
learning. And we
Yeah.
have all these adaptations, right? And younger in my marriage, and it's kind of part of my origin story of why I do what I do, is that I realized that all of these adaptations were not going to work for me in my marriage. They were not going to create this happily ever after that I was looking for. And so it kind of had to
Yeah.
like hit rock bottom, like do
Yeah.
this thing where I realized that all of my adaptations were not going to work and I needed a different system, a different
Right.
way. And so
Hmm.
what I hear you saying is that this happens to a lot of women in menopause,
Yeah.
is that they hit this realization that like, this has worked for me before in my life and maybe in my youth and things like that. But at
Yeah.
this point, and that makes sense that in midlife, that explains a lot of gray divorce, like a lot of
Yep.
the just phenomenons that we have that explains so much because you're under so much stress, especially as a woman. We've kind of defined our lives by raising our children, and our children are now leaving home. Our parents are aging, and it's usually predominantly falls on us to be the caregivers. And, careers are changing, financial situations are changing. It's just a hard period of life. And so if we
Totally.
haven't bumped up against it already, we're going to do it during perimenopause.
Absolutely. I love that. I got shivers when you were talking all about it. It's really sort of an unavoidable time that all women will go through, and how bad it is really depends on how much you kind of sacrificed who you truly are and how much you really need to change in order to, be your true and most authentic self going forward.
Oh, so good. And of course,
Mhm.
all of this affects your relationship and your connection
Yeah.
with your significant other. Oh, this is,
Yes.
yes.
Massive.
How can I feel like we need a loudspeaker in every town and
Yeah.
just be playing this episode so women aren't like beating themselves up anymore about
Yeah.
this. Like, how can we begin to support each other? Like, how can we get this message
Mm.
out? How can we tell our friends, like, it's okay, you're having a hard time? Like, it's totally to be expected.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether it's like how can we support each other as women or how can we support our partners in a
Yeah.
marriage, I really feel like this awareness piece is always the first part of growth, and on both ends, if we're talking in a relationship, men go through their own transition. That's not my expertise to talk about, but I think
We
when we
call it the
have
midlife
awareness,
crisis, right? When they have to get
we
the
do,
sports
right?
car and
Right. I heard someone call it menopause once, and I was
Oh,
like,
I
oh, that's a
love
good
that
term.
too. That's great.
But, either way, we know it's happening. The science is there, the statistics are there, the physical response is there. And I think just this awareness of us beginning to talk about it, will create space for support and understanding and compassion. The way we have that set up around our teams going through puberty, mothers going through pregnancy and postpartum, there's a lot of support there now and a lot of awareness and compassion. And because this is so significant, I think that first piece is really, really key. And I think in when it comes to partners, what can really, really be helpful is just encouraging other people to do what brings them joy, to discover themselves during this time, to take this space, and do some of the healthy habits together, whether it's with your friends or with your partner, so that they don't feel so alone during this time.
Yeah, this is so, so, so,
Mhm.
so good. So I want to kind of like land this plane for people. Like,
Yeah,
why is
yeah.
this one of the most powerful times for couples
Mm.
to grow closer together?
I love it. So I think because of this intolerance that we're at, sort of the clearing of the brain where we have this all of a sudden awareness of what's possible, of what we've been suppressing or what's no longer going to serve us. We're really primed for growth because we can no longer go on, people pleasing or sweeping things under the rug or putting people's other wants above our needs. So like our most powerful human need is to really feel like we're seen and we belong for who we are. And so because we're primed for growth, when we grow together with our partner, I think it really knits us even more deeply, more intimately together. So I think just having more patience for each other for what, can really just create that trust and make us more richly connected to handle this next phase of life. It's an
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah. And I think one of the best thing for women to learn how to do is to really tune into themselves and be able to ask for what they
Yeah.
need from their partner.
Yes.
And it sounds like this is like the perfect storm. Like you've got to be
Yes.
able to tune in, figure out what it is that you need, and not just expect your partner to know, but then to voice it, to tell them, like, I just need a hug, or I just need 20 minutes to myself, or I just need to skip my workout and go for a walk today.
I love that. I think you nailed it. And I think what's important for women to understand and probably their partners is that if you're not used to really tuning into that and like responding to your need with an accurate filler as opposed, sometimes we feel tired, so we reach for caffeine, or we feel, stressed and we reach for wine. If what you need is a hug, you got to start to tune into that. And if you're not versed in that yet, you'll get there, but it does take some time to really learn the language of your body.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, like, I feel like there's so many things I want to ask you, but I
Hmm.
definitely feel like when a woman feels really great in her own
Yeah,
skin, intimacy is so much easier. So I'm wondering if I
totally.
could just take your expertise, give us just a few tips on how it's different during this midlife time and how we can really care for ourselves differently right now.
Absolutely. I love that. So I think two things. The first is what we were just talking about: practice listening to your body. She whispers to you what she needs. And if you don't listen, eventually she will yell it at you until you have to pay attention. So, one of my
You
favorite
don't want to
questions
make
to
her
ask.
angry.
No, because it's very uncomfortable when she does. One of my favorite questions to ask myself is, how do I feel in my body? Not how my mind thinks about how I feel. 'Cause I think that's a really normal thing. We'll be like, oh, I feel frustrated. Well, that's not how your body's feeling. That's your mind. If your body is feeling tired, giving it caffeine so that you can push through is not the answer. It needs a rest. It needs a nap. You might need to ask for help to get that. If your body is feeling like it's trying to avoid some stress in your life, and we might want to reach for, we want to go to shopping, or we might want to reach for wine or something, when really what it needs is that hug or a little bit of alone time or breath work. So we really want to listen to our answers and stop numbing with food or drink or whatever we're kind of numbing with. Pay attention to the body and what she says. That's key. And I think the other thing to remember is that we kind of have these four health pillars. If you think of your health as a table, there's four legs. We have sleep and rest, we have nutrition and, fuel, we've got movement or exercise, and we have pleasure. And if one of those is rickety, then the dining table doesn't sit very well. If two are rickety, I mean, forget it. We're having a bad dining experience, right? So I think we want to remember, before we put all of our responsibilities above our health, can we simply each day think, have I slept well, or how have I slept? Have I eaten well? Have I moved my body in a way that she needs? And have I found joy and pleasure? Because those are the foundational pieces that we can build and optimize our health on, including our connections.
So important. Oh my gosh. I don't even know how you're going to add to this, but I'm going to ask you my question I ask every guest that comes on the show
Hmm.
is, if you had the undivided attention of all of the, I'm going to say women, but also their partners in the world for just a few minutes,
Hmm.
what's the most important thing you could teach them about perimenopause and how to keep growing closer through this really challenging time?
I listened to your show, so I know this question, and I was hoping you'd ask me, but I was like, what will I say? I think that, the most important thing I could teach is to remember perspective in this stage in life. So, because we know this is a very overwhelming time and we're going through this hormonal shift, sometimes I like to look at it like we're climbing Mount Everest with our partner. And we can look at that mountain together and think, oh, this is going to be awful. It's going to be cold. It's going to be miserable. I'm going to hate it every step of the way. Or we can prepare ourselves with the right tools. We can celebrate every summit we get to. We can think about the people we meet along the way. We can marvel at the views that we're going to get to and that we get to see. And I think that perspective really matters, as I mean, always in life, but especially in this time of life. So have the best perspective you can.
Ugh, so beautiful. Okay. Where can my listeners find you, learn more about your work and women going through perimenopause?
Oh, thank you so much, Monica. So you can come and catch me on the Period Whisperer podcast, anywhere you get your podcasts as well, on Instagram at Bria_period_whisperer. Or I do have a 10 Laws of Happy Hormones guide that you can just grab and kind of get a good kickstart and overall understanding. And maybe I'll send you that link, Monica. You can add it to the show notes.
I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much for your
Amazing.
time today, Bria.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure and honor. I really appreciate all that you do.
To learn more ways to deepen your intimacy and strengthen your relationship, make sure you watch this video next